Welcome, everybody, to a live Transition Talks event. The Hidden Bridge, the Untold Story of Military Transition. This is an episode I've been waiting for a long time, as well as I know everybody that's supposed to attend this has been waiting for a long time. Blessed to have Thomas McKenzie with me today. We're going to get through his introduction. We're going to tell his story. And then we've got two other parts to this in the transition on the other side of this in the coming weeks that I think are going to provide a ton of value for all of you who are either in transition, getting ready to transition, or guys like me and Thomas who have been through the transition and may still be struggling and you don't know what to work on. So guys, I encourage you, this isn't just another checklist webinar. It's not a PowerPoint. It's not about VA benefits or LinkedIn profiles. These are the conversations that we're going to have that nobody else is having. The one about what happens when you go from being a part of a machine that tells you exactly who to be to staring at a blank page and realizing you don't even recognize your reflection. Today, Thomas and I are going to sit down. He's a Marine, 20 years recruiting, mentoring, shaping futures. But here's the kicker. When he faced transition, he didn't just stumble, he got sucker punched. A paralyzing injury, a forced retirement, a loss of identity so brutal it cost him his family, his tribe, and damn near his life. So drop a salute emoji in the comments if you ever felt that transition punch in the gut, because today's guest sure has. I've felt it, and countless other veterans have felt it too. Here's why you need to care. Thomas didn't just survive his free fall. He turned it into a weapon, and he built one of the largest SkillBridge programs in the country, guiding nearly 10,000 service members a year through the minefield of civilian life. And he's not just talking theory. He's lived it. He's breathed it. He's bled it. So in part one of this three-part series, we're ripping off the Band-Aid. We're talking about the lies veterans are fed, the emotional programming nobody once warned you about, and why transition isn't a checkbox. It's a code red identity crisis. This isn't just another veteran story. This is ground truth about the battlefield that nobody's preparing you for. And guys like Thomas and I are going to stand up and prepare you for it. So whether you're active duty, a veteran, or just care about someone who is, stick around, because if we're going to fix this broken system, we've got to start by telling the stories everyone is trying to hide. Thomas, brother, I've been waiting for this for a long time. I owe you so much in my journey with the strategic veteran and everything I've been able to build. So this is probably the greatest privilege of my life at this point, to talk transition with you, to get your insights, and to help you tell your story that I don't think everybody's heard the full version of. So welcome to the show, brother.
Well, I really appreciate it, Adam, but you are setting this bar so high that I don't know if I'm going to be able to reach that with that intro, but just happy to be here. And happy to have the opportunity to share my story and really in hopes that we can impact others, because that's what this is. And I just had to say this before we really get rolling, Adam. Just like you and I have talked about on the phone in our hour-long conversations that come up, the amount of progress that you've made, the way that you've transformed and grown since the very first interaction that we had, that to me is it's the epitome of what it means to keep moving forward no matter what. So the things that you're doing, the message you're putting out there, the folks that you're helping, and the approach that you're taking, look, it's, in my opinion, the absolute dead right thing to do. And I'm going to be here to cheerlead you along the way.
I love it, brother. Hey, everybody gets the same question when they come on. First question, where did you grow up and what inspired you to join the Marine Corps?
This is a funny story in itself. So I'm from this little town, this little city known as Roseville, California. Best way I can describe it to you is it is just, it's suburbia. It's probably one of the greatest cities in the country. And I shouldn't give that away because we don't want everybody to come here. But it's just a great town, great community, small time feel, but it's got enough there. My story on what inspired me to join. Look, I'm somebody who I have no other way to put it, suckered in, pulled in. So I'll tell you the story here really quick. I was a 17-year-old kid in high school. It happened. And, not really sure what I'm going to do, but the military was the last thing on my mind. I was thinking about going to a community college, continuing to play the obscure sport of water polo, and just got to live like the party boy scene. And so I'm sitting in the quad one day and having lunch, trying to probably impress girls or something. And off in the corner, I see this person in a uniform just walk by, and they had just this weird aura about them, but didn't think anything of it. Finish up lunch. I, head to my next, they're in there, giving a presentation on the Marine Corps. And again, I'm not really interested in hearing what they have to say, but I could just see that this young Marine, who happened to be a guy that I went to high school with before, had really transformed his life. So it got me curious, but I, again, wasn't ready to jump at anything. So later that night, I'm off doing what 17-year-old kids do on a Friday night, which is, finding ways to consume beverages that you shouldn't. And there's this Marine at this party, and he probably shouldn't have been there. But, this guy who was just not a very good example, not a good human at this party. And he's just walking a little bit taller, has a little bit more confidence. He's got that, what the young kids call Riz at this point. And I, went up to him after consuming probably some stuff I shouldn't have consumed. And I walked up and I said, man, I don't know what you're on. I don't know what you do, but whatever it is, I want a little bit from it, or a little bit of it for myself. And so, of course, I make a phone call, set an appointment, and the next morning I wake up and realize I've got this appointment with a Marine recruiter. And not being a kid that wants to not live up to what I said I was going to do, I show up to the office and sit down with my recruiter, and I tell him flat out, like, look, I'm only here because I made a mistake. This is not something that I would ever do in a million years. But I don't want to waste your time, but I'm here because I said I would be. And that guy, that recruiter, he worked his magic on me and really opened my eyes as to what service could be. But I could tell you what the difference maker was in that conversation, Adam. It was the fact that this guy showed interest in me, and he was the first person that had ever asked me what my true goals were, what success looked like. And he just sold me so hard. And it wasn't even to become a Marine. He sold me in the idea of becoming a recruiter. And so it was right then and there that I decided what I wanted to do for the rest of my life was be a Marine recruiter. And so I joined the Marine Corps thinking that I could do that. I literally joined the delayed entry program, getting ready to go to boot camp. He tells me, hey, we've got to pick out a job for you. And I said, oh, that's simple. I just want to be a recruiter. So sign me up for that. And then the reality hit me that that's not how things worked. And it almost got me to discharge, but that was really kind of my Marine story. I wanted to be a recruiter. I started telling everybody about wanting to be a Marine recruiter and wanting to be a Marine. And then, before I knew it, people knew. And when I started having second guesses as to whether or not that was the right thing to do, I was already too far committed at that point. I couldn't be embarrassed. So yeah, that's how I ended up in the Marine Corps. I got suckered in. I wanted to be a recruiter.
Well, I think the interesting part about that story is the recruiter that, first of all, you're the first person I've had on the show who actually has a positive story about the recruiter, about awakening something inside of you, whether that just be through the questions he asked, asking you what success looks like to you or whatever. That's not at all how I was sold on the Army at all. I was sold on 3 hots in a cot. You're going to jump out of helicopters and do air, cool shit. And then I joined the infantry on a Ranger contract, which never goes through because the recruiter fucks the paperwork up or whatever. And the next thing I know, in my free time, I'm either cleaning weapons or sweeping floors, right? Like I got sold hook, line, and sinker. I like to joke that I was lied to. I kind of think I knew what I was signing up for. Like, we don't expect it to be sunshine and rainbows, but I think it's really cool that the recruiter inspired you to want to give back to young versions of yourself in the future in being a recruiter, because he awakened, what does success look like to me? And I think this is really important, as you and I have discussed at length on our various phone calls. What success looks like to you is different than what it looks like to me. And it's a big problem in the transition. We're not asking that question, which we're going to get to. So it's great to start the show off with a principle that we're going to be talking a lot about over the next couple of parts of this live, in that knowing what success looks like to you and being able to define that in clear, concise language is a big part of your transition. So thank you for telling that story. But I want to know, as someone who spent 75% of your career selling others military dreams, how many promises did you make that were half-truths now?
Ooh, see, now you're just hitting me with loaded questions. We could get into this, but 100% is it was never a deliberate thing. I can tell you this much: I never intentionally lied to a single human being that I interacted with, and really that was one of the key components for me. And I think what led to my success is that when I would work with somebody that was going to join, I was all the way in, and they were part of the tribe. And we were going to train them. We were going to give them everything that we had. And I was going to invest in their individual success. But when I say that 100% of them I lied to, I mean, look, I tell this story all the time. I would sit down and I kind of bought into the fallacy that a lot of service members, regardless of what branch they are, that they fall into. And that fallacy is pretty simple. It's, when you join, here's what's going to happen. You're going to gain leadership. You're going to gain these skills. We're going to teach you a job, and we're going to put you in a position to lead people. And then once you're in that position, you're going to become a master of that job, and you're going to lead more and get more responsibility. And check it out, Stead. This is what's going to happen when you leave service, whether it's 4 or 20 years later. People are going to be jumping up and down to hire you because of the skill sets that you possess. And that was the lie, or that was the fallacy. And it wasn't an intentional thing. It's just the way that we're programmed to believe. And for the young recruiter on the street, that's what they believe. That's what the senior leadership believes, because that's what we're told. And that it's because no one's transitioned out. And those that have transitioned out don't spend enough time to go back and awaken the folks to dispel the rumor. And so that's kind of where I found myself in my transition. And I had the most ideal transition and the most ideal transition plan. And, super grateful for that entire experience. But that's what really has got me to this point where I've agreed to do this with you. Is there are so many folks out there that don't hear the message, and they're blind to it, and they're getting, run over by a train. Not because they're not equipped, not because they're not skilled, not because they're not the right types of humans, but they just don't know how to get over that mental barrier that exists. So I've decided that's where my life is going to be spent, Adam, is making amends for, all those people I had zero regard for on the back end, because I believed everybody could be a success once it was done, so that we can awaken people and put them in a better position to win moving forward.
Yeah, and I imagine that's a pretty big eye opener for you when you're telling these guys you're going to develop these skills, which there's truth to that. These skills are valuable. They are sought after in the civilian world, but also the backside of that is you're going to have all these job opportunities thrown at you. Well, that's just simply not the case. I'm sure you, in your SkillBridge work, you figured this out. I just had a meeting right before this live with a veteran that I was connected with from another guest on this podcast. He's submitted 467 resumes in the last 3 months, and he's getting those generic responses. We have chosen a more qualified candidate. And it's like, this dude was head of recruiting for Amazon. How much more qualified do you fucking need to be? You know what I mean? Which tells me something's going on out there in the world that we're not talking about. We're not telling veterans about, with AI and resume scanning. And nobody, I'm willing to bet, of those 467 resumes and, taking out the interviews that he did get, they're probably not even viewed by a human. I would guess that they're just automatically disqualified through some algorithm that they're going through. And these are the truths that we're here to tell, because you as a recruiter were roping people into this with I don't think it obviously wasn't malicious. It was you doing your job the way you were trained to do your job and buying into the Marine Corps, just like I did my job and bought into the Army for the global war on terror, whatever, and then hindsight being 2020, we get out and we see the entire perspective of all of this. And now you're out here trying to correct the deficiencies that you helped, kind of usher into this era. So I think the only way to do that is to get out and see it for what it is and make change, right?
100%. And in that statement that you just had there, like I'm going to put it to you like this. For me, the Marine Corps is the most beautiful organization on planet Earth. And I'm sure the Army is for you. And The other branches are for the other folks that might be here. But it truly is, in that system, in that environment, it is the most efficient thing. It drives results. It accomplishes the mission. And you have incredible human beings that are part of that. So in that controlled environment that's dominated by the Uniform Code of Military Justice and the rules and regulations that govern the armed forces, it works. But it takes a lot to get somebody to that point to where they can comply and be a good part of that team. And I, from an old commanding officer of mine, mutual suffering, breeds loyalty. And that's what it was for me. Like the work of being a recruiter is not fun. It's actually the least fun job that most human beings will ever encounter. But it's through that mutual suffering, it's through those battles that you have together that really kind of shows you what you're made of. But it just grows such a deep loyalty to the people that you serve with. And then the people that you serve. And for me, that was kind of the fuel that kept me going through about 15 and a half years of just grinding it out at the street level all across America. So, for me, I have no problem with any branch of service, what they're doing, because they are there to protect our national security. And unfortunately, it's the way it has to be to keep us safe. But I really have just seen, through helping so many folks from all the different branches of service transition out of the military, there are things that can be collaborated on in order to get better outcomes for those people that selflessly choose to serve. And so that's where I want to put my energy, is to not change the system to where it's unrecognizable or puts us at risk, but reinforces the beauty of those individual branches and gives us a better posture, on a national security standpoint.
Well, and not only that, but like encouraging future generations to want to serve, right? Because they're using us as examples. And let's be honest, us GWAT guys, we're not very good examples. Our lives are a fucking mess. We can't get the help that we need. Help that they do offer takes 9 fucking months to get an appointment. I was just at the VA on Monday, and I had done all the legwork, self-referred to PT, trying to take care of some issues. And I'm like, hey, I just want to see this provider because I know this provider gives good care. They're like, there's no budget for us to pay for that. We're not going to approve it. You have to see our people. Well, we're not even going to get you into physical therapy until April. And it's like, motherfuckers, like, what's the point of this? What's the point of this? So obviously we're going to talk about all of this in future episodes. And it's hard having this conversation with you, just because there's so many different things that we're working on to get to the point of all of these problems. So I got to remember we're here to tell your story. You said that, and we're moving into your transition. You said that you had the perfect transition plan, and you had an easy transition, or what you thought was going to be an easy transition. I don't think it was as easy as you may be leading on. So take me to the moment of that paralyzing injury and that second that you realized your body was betraying everything that you had built.
Yeah. So let me rewind, and I'll walk you on there. So I'll give you just a quick, make it all come together in context. So I started recruiting in Sacramento. I was actually lucky enough to recruit out of my same high school that I was recruited out of. So I came back to hometown America after I was done with about my first 5 years in the Marine Corps. And just from that experience overall, I very quickly realized that the more that you invest in the people that you're recruiting, the better result I was going to get, and the better result they were going to get. And that allowed me very early on in my recruiting tenure to kind of get moved up the chain and be able to take over my own station, and then have the opportunity to become this weird, unique MOS that is either loved or hated. And I'd probably say more hated than loved. I was able to become a career recruiter for the Marine Corps. And I did that at a really young age. I think I was probably 24, 25 years old. Spent the next couple of years in Sacramento and just grew some of the deepest friendships with human beings, being part of that unit. And we were all part of building something that was great. And Sacramento recruiting just became a dominant force, for Marine recruiting across the Marine Corps Recruiting Command enterprise. Back in about 2013, I had a commanding officer who did a lot of investment in me, because look, going back to, what lies did I tell? There were some times that I was walking a very fine line to make the mission. And, some points where I could have just ended my entire career, and we'll save that for another time too. But this guy invested a lot in me and really kind of pulled me back to reality, to what the values of the Marine Corps were and what we were there to do. And over that course of a painful 2.5 years, I just started to feel like I was transforming myself. And in that, I'm not saying recruiting is ever easy, but Sacramento recruiting seemed easy. And so from his nudging and from my desire to kind of want to go get into a tougher fight, I end up with orders out to Denver, Colorado in about the 2013 timeframe. And Denver, Colorado, how I got sold on that idea from that same commanding officer, because it was between Colorado and potentially going to Southern California, was like, look, Southern California recruiting is great, but those guys don't think that they have any problems to fix. But Denver knows that they're not that great, and they want to do whatever it takes to get fixed. And so ended up with the orders to Denver, Colorado. And that's kind of began my next iteration of growth, where I kind of moved up the chain away from, supervising recruiters in an office, just a team of 5, to where I was, leading the entire operations and partly responsible as commanding officer to make sure that the mission was made. And that experience in itself really grew me, because I was forced to deal with some leadership that was tough to deal with. It was a different set of problems, but I took it for what it was. It was growth. And that time that I had in Colorado, I was able to really kind of, stamp my name on some, stamp my name on some new guys being part of the system. And those guys now are just absolutely killing it. So I was in Colorado for about 5 years. And then, disaster happens again, need to get back to my family and be able to support them. So, coming back to Northern California was something that I wanted to do, and looking for the next challenge, went to the most broken place that existed in the nation. And that was San Francisco, California, because who wouldn't want to go recruit in the most liberal part of the entire state and sign up for that battle? And I'll tell you, my time in San Francisco, some of the greatest human beings I ever served with, because you had to be committed to make it happen every single day. And those were some of the deepest friendships that I've built over the years, recruiting guys in to go be part of that fight, doing it where everybody else is afraid. And I had some phenomenal leaders that were part of that unit that were ahead of me. And I've got to say this, Adam, because if this guy's watching, he's going to get all upset, because I said some not nice stuff at my retirement ceremony to him that was in parody, but I got to be real. But I worked for a guy over there that just really rounded me out, taught me to think through problems instead of just reacting, really got me well positioned so that I could be the guy that replaced him. And so, before I hit my 20-year mark, we've got this plan in place. He's moving on to a higher billet. I'm going to have the opportunity to, be the recruiting instructor of San Francisco and kind of take it to the next level. I got selected for E9 before I hit my 20-year mark. And so life is really good. Like it actually couldn't have been any better as far as I was concerned, because my career was cruising. The Marines were killing it. And I was about to be able to kind of stamp my name on what was going to happen next. And as I'm out, after I got selected, you go out to a seminar for about a week or two where they onboard all the newly selected E9 Master Gunnery Sergeant recruiter types and kind of put you through an orientation course there. And so knowing as soon as I come off this trip, it's on and cracking, and I'm going to have the opportunity to really make my name for myself. And I ended up, because I slept in a crappy hotel bed with this herniated disc about 2 days before that course got out, and so bad to the point where I couldn't sit down. I would try to go to the bathroom and my legs were on fire and couldn't take more than 2 steps. And I'm stepped all the way out in Virginia and have to get back to California. So get hauled off to the ER. They start shoving pain pills down my throat. And lucky enough, I had one of my Marines out there for a course, and he yeah, carried me on a wheelchair all the way back to the airport and got me on a plane back to San Francisco. And I was thinking that this was okay, a tweaked back. It's only going to be a couple of days. Just need to ice it and rest it. And that transformed into about 60 days of me being laid up on my back at my mom's house, not able to get up to go to the bathroom, not able to do anything except just lay there and think and be in pain. And it was that moment right there where, I really started to experience what transition was going to be like, but I didn't have the context to really put it all together. And what I mean by that is this, you know, guys have have a mission while they're on active duty, and that is their sole focus. That is their sole purpose. And, when you're involved in that mission every single day, there are people calling you, checking on you, motivating you, pushing you. They're there for you, and you don't feel like you're abandoned. Well, when you're not part of that mission because you're either laid up or you decide to retire or you move on, you can't necessarily take it personally that they're focused on the things that they need to be focused on. And so I just remember thinking to myself, because I didn't know if I was ever going to recover again. I couldn't walk. I couldn't stand up for longer than about 10 seconds. And I just remember thinking to myself, what is it that I'm going to do if this doesn't work out? And then again, put the Marine mentality on. And it's like, I'm going to find a way to get through this. So I started going to a chiropractor twice a day. My poor mom, who's just the most amazing lady of all time, would carry my broken body into the car and, drive me there twice a day. And over the course of, about 45 to 60 days and a couple injections later, I found myself kind of recovered to the point where I could function, but I was not functional. And so I would walk with a limp. I couldn't do anything except instruct people on how to recruit. I mean, it was probably the most miserable moment that I'd had in my entire career, was trying to just muscle through and get to that point. But with, hard work, commitment, a never quit attitude, not going to be defeated no matter what, I was able to get myself back to a kind of full duty situation and, fulfill that role. And that was really what I did. I spent my time just trying to recover and focused on recruiting and focused on teaching those Marines that I interacted with. And look, I'll just tell you, when you're at the top there, making those decisions now, if I could go back in time, there'd be so many things that I do differently. But that was the moment, man. Is I worked myself to that position, was starting to feel quite a bit better about how things were going to go, and was pretty optimistic about what was to come in the future. And that's really where my transition began. So I promise I'll stop talking at him so you can ask more questions, because I'll just keep going like a Pee Wee Herman doll that when you pull the cord. But the reality is, I'd put my time in San Francisco and was at the point where I was due for orders again. And so my hope was, like, in this perfect transition plan, that I could move down to Sacramento and finish out where I started, do another 3 years. We thought the guy was going to rotate in that time frame. I thought this was going to be an absolute beautiful situation for me, because I'd spent 5 years in San Francisco helping build that team. And so the commanding officer that I had at the time, he says, "Hey, we know you're due for orders. We know we know you're ready to go move on to something else. So here's your offer. Your offer is to go to Los Angeles." And Los Angeles is too far away from my family. And, here I am upset because I've committed all this time in my career, committed so much time to kind of rehabbing myself back in there. I've been completely loyal to the institution. The only thing I want is to be close to my family and have the opportunity to just take a little bit more time to prepare. And it was like LA, or you can stay in place. And that was the moment right then and there that I decided it was time to move on. I was done. And not done for the wrong reasons, like done for the right reasons, because my personal belief is that if you're going to be part of the armed forces, if you're going to be part of an institution like the Marine Corps, it is the service over you every single time. And you go to where they tell you to go. And if you're not willing to do that anymore, you're not going to lead with the same type of gusto that those service members absolutely need. So that's where my transition really began. I made a decision right then and there that it was time to go. I dropped my papers, and the oh crap, pucker started to take effect. And it was just about to, it was about figuring out what I was going to do next. So I could tell the story of what happened next if that's what you want, but I'm going to hold there because I feel terrible for talking on a monologue for 10 minutes.
Well, that's the whole point of this, is to tell your story in your own words. So stop feeling bad about it. And yeah, that's actually where I'm going next. When did it all fall apart for you? Because you filled out my form graciously after dealing with some personal shit all week. I know that's the last thing you wanted to do last night. I'm grateful. But you've mentioned losing everything. You've mentioned having the tribe, having the right friends around you. How does all of this come together and affect you in your transition? How does this start to manifest itself as you're getting out? You've made this decision because, same thing for me, man. Like I knew I was going to go to 22 years. I was by and large a mediocre soldier when I was in, with everything that I've unlocked for myself at this point. But, for me, like, I knew I was going to 22, but I'm at 13 and now I'm being med boarded. I didn't even have a chance to plan anything. I didn't have what you had, where I'm laying around with a herniated disc, forced to think about what the future looks like. Look, this could be end. It's like, no, I tore my shoulder, had 2 surgeries, and then I'm going for a follow-up, and they're like, hey, you're done. You're not doing this anymore. It's like, oh, fuck. Like, what? So for me, I think pretty immediately everything started to fall apart. And I say that because I was drinking at the time. I had been, sequestered to range control because you're just a useless slot on an MTO, that they need to fill. They need that staff sergeant role to go lead that squad or platoon, probably platoon at the time, because we didn't have E7s. They don't give a shit about you. When you can no longer serve in the capacity that you signed up to serve for, they just kick you to the curb, and nobody's there to help you, to give you the instruction that you've spent your entire career getting from somebody above you, because everybody has a boss, and not knowing where, what direction to go or how to even do that for yourself. And so when did this fall apart for you? Like, was it gradual? Was it immediate? And speak to the challenges that you faced from day one to where you're at now.
Yeah. So let me go a little bit further back, and this will kind of take me into, my previous employment before getting involved with what I'm involved with now. So the day I decided to retire, I'm dating someone down in the Sacramento area. I hop in the car and go to visit her. And as I go to visit her, it's like, hey, I don't know what I'm going to do. I just know that I dropped my retirement and I'm going to figure it out, but we're going to be able to be in proximity. And that's the plan. And in walks, a former acquaintance of mine, who starts talking about this SkillBridge program that he has put together. And, at first, I couldn't believe what I was hearing, because it seemed like the ultimate opportunity, an opportunity where I could get some time off back for me to not only reskill and retool myself, but really help me figure out what the next phase was going to be. And I'd heard of SkillBridge at the time. This is back in 2021. But SkillBridge, to me, from what I had known about it, was that you went and worked at a company and then hopefully you got a job at the end of that. And that just didn't necessarily align with what I was looking for, because I wasn't sure what I was looking for. My entire life was the Marine Corps. My entire life was recruiting. That was I only saw the world in black and white. And it's either you helped the mission and what I had to accomplish, or you didn't. So this was an opportunity for me to do a little bit of introspection on my life. And so starts telling me about the program, and it sounds like it's almost too good to be true. And we do a little bit of research, and it's a real thing. And it's like, wow, okay, I want to be involved with this and want to have this opportunity. So for me, I did what just about any other Marine does when they find something good. You tell all your friends, like, hey, this is the thing that can really set us up. And we, really believe in this, where service members can help service members through that transition, through that time. And that's how I ended up over there. And if I'm being quite honest, part of me, as I was wrapping up my career in the Marine Corps, like, I wanted nothing to do with service members whatsoever. Like the NCOs, there were some great ones, but there were some whiny ones. The staff NCOs, there were some great ones, but there were some ones and wanted nothing to do with helping service members. But I saw this time as an opportunity to help grow a vision that was innovative. Started telling all my friends that this could be a pathway. And a lot of us just kind of, ended up going through our transitions, being part of building that program. And I've got to correct something for the record, Adam, that you said earlier. I didn't build anything. I was part of that team, like part of that group that helped build something that I really think is super special. And so anyway, I'm going through this transition and I'm having the opportunity to interview different companies and get some introspection as to where I want to go. And originally I thought that I wanted to work in the world of recruiting and staffing again. And so I'm kind of like working out deals to work this job and potentially work as a recruiter and in staffing. The money was super appealing. And that's the only thing I thought about when I was getting out was I'm going to get out of the Marine Corps and I'm going to put myself in a situation to where I can make a lot of money, because that's what you're programmed to believe. You're programmed to believe that if you land a six-figure job, that is success upon leaving leaving the service. And that's where my focus was. But then some things started happening in life. And so here are some of those things. This relationship that I'd been in, blew up to the point where we're no longer together. We're not talking. It's just bad. And that was kind of like the first hit, was this thing that I thought was super solid in my life, or at least pretty solid, is now gone. The phone calls from the folks that I'd served with, they stopped being less frequent. It felt more like I was bothering people if I reached out. And so I kind of start isolating myself. And this is where I say I had the perfect transition. I was with a group of people through that time in SkillBridge that really were my tribe. And so when I had these feelings, instead of having to bottle everything up, I had a sounding board to, reach out to and have that conversation with. When I went through that breakup, instead of having to just cry in silence all by myself, they were there to kind of lift me up. And so that kept me afloat a bit. And then life keeps happening, right? So not to sit here and try and get pity from people that are out there, but boom, my grandmother out of nowhere, right as I am officially retired and out of the Marine Corps, passes away, has a tragic accident, breaks her neck, 24 hours in the hospital, hoping that we're going to have her pull through. She seems better the next day, and boom, she's gone. And, look, grandmothers, grandfathers, that's what they do. They pass away. But, mine for me played such a huge part in my life. And I was really lucky for that last tour to be in proximity to her. And so now my grandma just passed away. My mom is now responsible to take care of my 93-year-old grandfather, who's completely heartbroken. And I'm in this process of just kind of watching my mom go through losing her mom, seeing her burdened, kind of dealing with my 93-year-old grandfather. And now I've got these stressors of really trying to figure out what life is going to look like for me in the future. And so, again, we're sitting here and we're trying to fight through as a family. I've got that tribe by my side and I'm kind of explaining these things. And then boom, another hit from life happens and grandpa passes away out of nowhere. And again, that wouldn't necessarily be so bad. But my mom all of a sudden is finding herself displaced because she lives in one of my grandparents' rental properties and she's got nowhere to go. So here it is. What are we going to do next? And it's like, Mom, come live with me. And it's not even a burden. And let's go and let's do this. So that hit comes on. And then, goes into, I've got a great uncle who's in his late 80s and a great aunt who's now 97 years old. And there's nobody left to take care of them. And so now this responsibility kind of comes and falls on my shoulders. And anyway, I start doing things to kind of deal with those stressors that used to be seen as positive, fun things while I was in the Marine Corps that were really super destructive to my life. And so, I start hitting the bottle a little bit earlier, what turned into, a celebration anytime a mission was completed or I had a little bit of time off to blow off steam, that was kind of the coping mechanism. So I'm drinking a little bit more. And
a little bit,
all these factors, drinking a lot, a little bit more is what I would say. But, just making not good decisions, finding myself in a situation where I don't want to go out because I don't want to run into, an ex. Just starting to feel super, super isolated. And it's like I'm going to work and I'm coming home and that's my routine. And there is no investment in myself. I'm just sitting here trying to be numb for myself, but positive for others that are there. And again, I'm so super fortunate because I had a tribe of people that when I started to go dark, they'd yank me back. But that's really what in my opinion, that's what the big untold story is. People never talk about what the emotions are that come from leaving that environment. You're the king of the castle. You understand where you are, what you do, what your role is. You understand your purpose. And all of a sudden now the purpose is gone. And you start resorting to these coping mechanisms that we used to have to deal with stress. And if you're not cautious of that, it just really starts to drag you down. And so, a buddy of mine sees this and sees that I'm going really, really dark. And he forces me to hop on a plane and go spend, the week with him before Christmas. And that's, he wakes me, he just shook me alive. And not that he did anything directed that I do anything, but he started helping me just kind of put things in order and understand what my value was and taking the steps that were really necessary for me to kind of pull myself and awaken out of that. And so knowing that I had a skill set that aligned pretty well with civilian employment, knowing that I was a little bit more civilianized than most service members because of my time on recruiting duty, it just really started to hit me hard. Like, what about the guys that are in the grunts? What about the service members that don't get the opportunity to participate in a SkillBridge? What about the folks out there that are just forced to leave and figure life out in their terminal leave status? That's the most asinine thing I've ever heard. Yeah, it's insane. And we all know it's insane. But I realized something at that point, Adam, for me, and why it doesn't get any better, and why veterans are seen as broken toys, and why we take on sometimes this victimized mentality. It's because it's a traumatizing experience if you don't do it the right way, and you fight so hard to get through it. You fight so hard to pull yourself up that once you do get through it and you do go out there and start kicking butt, no one wants to relive that. No one wants to go through that same type of pain again. And it's because we're not necessarily sharing those lessons with each other. That's where I said, okay, this is the line of work that I want to be part of. And I want to be part of this super great team of people that care. And we want to kind of replicate this so that it can reverberate out there in the space and start waking people just waking people up to what actually plagues service members. And, to be part of that for, over 2 years, that I'm telling you right now, most special time in my entire life was the opportunity to work with that group. They're phenomenal, phenomenal human beings. And they really do care about the mission. And the mission is creating better pathways so that service members don't have to go through that alone. They don't have to feel like the same emotions that a lot of us have felt. And I can tell you right now, they do that every single day over there. And it's amazing to watch. But for me, kind of moving on here, my thoughts are, hey, we touched 10,000 in that 2-year time frame, and that's phenomenal. But what about the 490,000 that maybe aren't afforded that opportunity over 2 years? Or that, I think SkillBridge has about 30,000 participants, nationwide. What about everybody else? And that right there, Adam, is the problem, in my opinion, is there are 470,000 people over the last 2 years that didn't necessarily have the time that they needed. They didn't have the space that they needed. And although the resources were there, you don't know what you don't know. And if there's not somebody sitting there screaming it from the mountaintops of what you could do to prevent some of this stuff, if we're just talking about job focused outcomes, we are not doing enough to protect our brothers and sisters that we deployed with. We're not doing enough to break this veteran narrative. And for me, that's the rampage I'm on with you here, is to start really opening people's eyes and finding ways to collaborate and work together so that everybody can really thrive in their post-service career and live a full and fulfilled life.
Oh, and because it's possible for everybody. We don't have to go through life the way that it's set up for us to go through life right now. I'm a prime example. You're a prime example. It took me a little bit longer to get there, whatever. I know now. And now I feel like it's my responsibility to be a voice for the community who has no idea. And dude, we're done with your story. We're moving into our thoughts and the conversations that you and I have had privately in transition. So, I know this is a point of contention, and this is something that you are expertly qualified to talk about in what the work you did with that program for 2 years, helping nearly 10,000 service members transition. What is the most dangerous lie that's being told? I did not have an opportunity to go through a SkillBridge. It wasn't a real thing in 2015 when I got out. I really am still trying to figure out like exactly when SkillBridge entered the picture. There was a number of programs when I was getting out, like you could go be a welder. They would put you through this like 3 months of welding school or whatever. Actually have one of my best friends, he went through it and he doesn't use the shit to this day, right? Like he just did it to get away from the Army. He's also a fellow entrepreneur out doing wonderful things in the sales space. So, he figured it out through, I think, going through that program. But like my whole transition out, I went to the resume writing class and that was it. Everything else was done online. I got a DD 214 and they really just tap you on the ass and say, use your GI Bill, good luck. And so what is the lie that's being told about the transition, in your opinion, and over working with 10,000 service members?
The lie, the big lie, or the untold lie. I would say number one, it's what I alluded to earlier, that everything's going to be okay because of your service alone. And I can't tell you how many times I would say the following. It's like, look, the job market is tough. Your service alone is not going to be enough to get you hired. Your service and the education that you have is not going to be enough to get you hired. The service, your education, the skill sets, your leadership are not going to be enough to get you hired, because you have to learn to play in a new environment with different teammates, and it's just a different language. And so I'd say that the big lie is it's just that you're going to be okay, or it's going to be okay, or I'm going to figure it out and I'm just going to be. That is all crap. If you don't have a plan, if you don't know where you want to go, it's going to be a bad day. So I'd say that's the first part of it. The second part of it is really kind of difficult. And it's difficult because when you're in service, when you're in uniform, you don't have time to think and really reflect and understand where it is that you want to go if you do it in a vacuum. And so I know a lot of service members, we know that date is coming, whether it's a retirement or the end of your enlistment. We know that date is coming, and we may have ideas on what we're going to do afterwards, but it's not a plan. Ideas will fail, and they're going to fail hard and quick. A solid, concrete plan is absolutely necessary to win. And so that's the other piece to this. You really have to make sure that you have a plan, but you can't have a plan unless you can take that time and that space for yourself to figure out what your definition of success is and where it is that you really want to go. And so that would be the other thing. When I used to hear the word networking, it's like, okay, I'm going to talk to Tom or Joe over there and figure out what they're doing and make them friends of mine so I can use them later on. But yeah, that's it right there. The power of networking, the power of asking questions, the power of going out and talking to other veterans that have done or doing the things that you want to do, or have done the things that you think you want to do. Getting into conversations with them, I think, is the most critical point are critical part of the transition. Like, you need to find a way to kind of expand your mind and really have those honest, authentic conversations with people that are going to give you sage advice because they've done that. Yeah. So in short, those are really the lies. It's not going to be easy. This is the hardest thing that anybody will ever do in their career. And I don't care if they're a battalion commander in charge of thousands of folks. They could be the senior enlisted advisor that advises that commander. They could be an operator that's had this high operational tempo. They could be a wizard at their trade, their MOS, AFSC, et cetera. But this will be the hardest thing that anybody does. And so if we're really talking about the lie, everybody talks about this transition thing being just an easy process. The reality is this is going to be a journey that, depending on how you approach it and how prepared you are for it, it is going to be, it's going to be a ride, and you have to strap yourself in. Everybody thinks that you're at the end, take off the pack, and it's going to be, no, this is where it's time to dig in and fight even harder. And I think that we do a disservice to those that serve by not sharing that message enough.
Yeah, I totally agree, because in all the conversations I've had, that's the common thing that keeps coming up is like, everybody said this should be easy if I follow the steps from TAP or SFL TAP or whatever the fuck they call it now. And, you hear words like network, and you hear words like, use your GI Bill. That was what they stressed to me. Use your GI Bill, use those benefits you earned, get that degree, and man, you'll be smooth sailing on the other side of that degree. And it's like, okay, that's great. I'm actually writing about this. I was challenged to write a book about the transition and get it published this year by, another mentor. And so I've actually taken that serious, and I'm to the part in the book where I'm realizing, like, you're not going to be okay. And it's a false transition when you do it the way that I did it. When you get out and 2-3 months later, you've enrolled in school, you're getting BAH money, you don't really need to work because you're 100% disabled. CRSC would come later, but I now have a new mission and a new purpose, and it's to get that degree. So, for 2 years, it was go to flight school. And man, I was chomping at the bit because I thought I was living my dream to get that private pilot's license. I couldn't wait to be in the airplane. I was at the ops center at the airfield every morning at 6:30, ready for ground school at 7:30, waiting for my flight, sitting in the ops room, learning from those that are ahead of me, waiting for somebody to cancel their flight so I could get more time in the air. And I do that for 2 years, and I get an AAST in professional pilot. It's a real degree, I swear. I could show you the certificate. But then what, right? Then I'm left there like, okay, I've got 250 hours. Nobody's going to hire me until I have a minimum of 500 hours. Flight time cost at the time like $270 an hour with an instructor. That's not feasible because I'll be broke inside of a month, as much as I was trying to fly. I don't know anybody in the industry because I didn't grow up in the industry, and the aviation industry is loaded with, there's a word for it, and I don't know it right now. I'll think of it after the show, but, fathers who are pilots, mothers who are pilots, their kids get paid for flight school. They're just expected to just jump in the pipeline, kind of how colleges work, and so it's like, I got a buddy who got out at the same time I did. He was one of my instructors further along, and he's like, hey, I'm going over here to this college getting my bachelor's degree. Check this out. I think you'll enjoy it. And so now I've got a second false transition, right? Because now I'm jumped into the bachelor's degree program. And I went to the Evergreen State University in Olympia, Washington. And for those of you who don't know anything about it, it's a choose your own adventure school. And I actually think it's a really awesome program, particularly because I think it's a lot harder than traditional school. You can't skate by. You either do the work and get the credit, or you don't do the work and you don't get the credit. There's no grades. There's a self-eval, a professor eval, and a joint evaluation that determines your credits. And so I had a really good time with that. But then I graduated, and I graduated at the height of COVID. Now what the fuck am I supposed to do? I lived in Washington State at the time. I couldn't go back to flying to finish anything because they had shut down all flight schools. I don't think they even opened them until 2023, right? Not letting 2 people in one airplane for 3 years. So that wasn't an option. I was managing a gun store at the time who the owner was like, I was producing for him So he stopped showing up, and it's like, I got a dude that I'm paying $15 an hour to manage my whole business. Like, that's a good deal for him. Right. So, knew I didn't want to stay there doing that for $15 an hour, working 7 days a week. Like, what am I supposed to do? Well, I find Voc Rehab. They've got a program, get some extra money by applying to jobs. Caveat, can't turn down job interviews. Got to send a little report after the job interview to keep getting the money. I pick up the insurance gig, and I fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. You're a veteran. You're going to have so much success out here. You've got the leadership. You've got the discipline. You've got the adaptability, the problem-solving skills. You've probably heard no a bunch of times in your life. You can go knock doors and sell an intangible product to the poorest 1/3 of Americans and make a lot of money doing it. And I was like, cool, let's do that. And then I get out there and find out I don't know what I don't know. Nobody's willing to educate me. They just expect me to come into this role and pick up this job and be successful at it. And it's like, I don't know the first thing about chargebacks. I don't know the first thing about following up with a book of business. I don't know the first thing about how do you actually sell an intangible product that's life insurance to people who have no financial education whatsoever. Like at any point over that 5 years, did anybody from the Army set me up for success? No, they didn't.
Yeah, I mean, and you're going to get me going on a thing about the GI Bill, and I don't want to become this, attacked human being. But look, I'll tell you, you want another lie? I'll give you one, or at least this is just my opinion. Like, the GI Bill is a fantastic thing for those that truly know how they want to spend their time. They know what type of education that they need, and they leverage that tool to put themselves in a position to be better positioned for what's going to come next. But it shouldn't be the default thing that service members go to. And for far too long, and I think about when I was a young Marine, debating whether or not I was going to re-enlist that first time. That was kind of like the default plan. I'll just get out and I'm going to go back to hometown America, and I'll use my GI Bill because it comes with BAH and life will be okay. I'll figure it out. That is so foolish, because it's like, hey, I used to say this a lot, when I'd have conversations with service members that was their plan, those were their thoughts. And it's like, let's be really honest about this for a second. Number one, you have no idea what you want to leverage this thing for. You're just going to go to school just to go to school to get BAH. Well, look, how many hours a week are you going to spend in school? And we would break that out, between commuting there, sitting in the class, writing the papers, studying for the quizzes. How many hours of yourself, how many hours of your most precious commodity are you going to invest in this school venture? And then let's take that BAH and those number of hours per week and add them up over the month. And let's see what the math works out to be. And when depending on where you live, you find out that you're getting paid $14 an hour to put yourself in a position to go to school, but you're not really taking anything out of the situation. That is like the dumbest situation. That's the dumbest deal ever. It's great if you know what you want to do and you're going to leverage it the right way. But if you have no clue, right, it is just absolutely ridiculous. Why would you do that? Because you make more money in the state of California working at a Chick-fil-A than the BAH money that you're going to get there. And that's another thing that I think so many service members don't realize when they get out, is that your time is so precious. It is the one thing you can't get more of. And why would you waste it pursuing things that you're not passionate about, pursuing things that are not going to put you in a better position so you can get a couple $1,000 in BAH? That's insane. That's a bad deal. And, the fact of the matter is, we have young NCOs, we have senior staff NCOs that when they hear that from their service members that are in uniform, oh, that sounds good to me, man. Good luck. Sorry that you're not going to be part of the club anymore. Go figure it out. That's just wrong. Mm-hmm. It's wrong. It's wrong.
Well, and so we've got a LinkedIn user here right now talking about this. I don't know who you are, LinkedIn user, but thank you for the comment. It says, I'm going through that right now on how to properly use it. When you have a wife and kids and bills to pay, good luck us trying to properly use that. It's true, man. Like they've adapted the GI Bill to this one size fits all. This is the tangible benefit that most of you said that you joined for. Then life happens to you over the course of your career. Because let's be honest, I'd say the number of people who do 6 or more years is probably far greater than those that do fewer than 6 and get out, right? And now circumstance happens. You meet a girl, and then you end up having a family, and now you've got this to contend with. And so the GI Bill is not a viable option anymore. In fact, I know more people who are transferring their GI Bill over than are actually using it for themselves or giving it to their kids or their wife, because it's a better use of a resource than for them. And so LinkedIn user, I don't know how to answer this question, man. And this is why Thomas and I are here to have these conversations is because these are the conversations that nobody's having. Nobody's talking about, it's not feasible for me to use my GI Bill. And you're trying to pigeonhole me into this fucking box because that's all you know how to do. You don't have the answers, and you're not willing to go out and have these conversations and collect the answers to put a program together that actually is something that we will benefit from on the other side of our transition.
You want to hear my crazy idea, Adam? I'll give you my crazy idea because I'm like really good at crazy ideas. And so with this whole Doge formation, like Elon Musk, and you'll probably never ever see this, but if you see this, I'm going to give you something to take to the bank right now. In my opinion, if the GI Bill could be converted, if a service member had an option to get a cash out of their BAH at the end of their contract, not saying that there wouldn't be disaster stories that came up, but you give people a whole lot more breathing room. And then you'd save the money that we spend shoveling back to these educational institutions for degrees that never come to be. So you want to, in my opinion, if there was an option, if I had the option to cash out my GI Bill for 50 grand, to give myself that money to start a business or just give myself some breathing room to figure things out, in my opinion, we would be way better served, for this entire community. It's a way to cut down costs because you wouldn't have to pay for the actual instruction. People would get out of it what they're hoping to get out of it. And I think if they had that financial security that could potentially provide for even just a short amount of time to gap it over, I think a lot of these service members would be able to find themselves, because that's the beauty of having time and space is you need to go through and experience this. You need to get into those conversations. You have to do it away from the pressures of your duty there. And we cannot distract from what those service members have to do in order to keep the machine running. That is our number one. But let's talk about this piece, Adam. And you said this earlier, what happens when a service member has a bad transition? Well, I can tell you what happens because, and that maybe we save this for next week, but I'll bring this up. When you have a veteran struggle, that's a terrible thing, not just for the individual, not just for their family member. It's a bad thing for the country because now they're a drain on resources. Because they're going through, they're having problems. They're not, fulfilled. And these selfless people that deployed to places and fought in battles and did things that the rest of the American citizenry didn't want to do are now struggling. And now they are the model for your American public out there to see, for the youth that should be the ones coming in to replace us. They are the model. And on top of that, these people are generally parents or friends of friends of people that have kids, and they don't want their kids to serve anymore. They have a bad transition, a bad experience, and you're a little less likely to want your kid to be able to follow in your footsteps because you don't want them to go through that same traumatic experience. Like, what are we doing here is what it comes down to. We're trying to fix the force and make sure that we have readiness. And so we're going to deny people the opportunity to transition with dignity. And we're going to deny them the opportunity to seek those answers out. And we're going to prevent them because we need them here. And then they're going to go back out and they're going to become what I call recruiting insurgents that work against that recruiter that's there. But what in the world, Adam, if we came up with a process where we leveraged programs that existed that were currently in operation and said, we're going to make a commitment so that people are fulfilled and that they are thriving in life and that they are taken care of. If my kid, my future kid maybe, came to me and wanted to follow in my footsteps, I can tell you as a patriot, I would be behind it if that's what they wanted to do. But good Lord, would I not be concerned with what they were going to go through at the end? And so I'd have to do everything that I could as a parent to try and help shape that for them. And that's a guy who loves recruiting. That's a guy who spent 15 years there. What about the service member that did 4 years, got worked up into the last day that they possibly could be there, had 30 days to figure it all out, and then struggled for 2 or 3 years going through some trauma after they got done deploying and doing things that were important for this nation? And so that's just kind of like the sick paradox. And I think kind of my unique perspective that we can save for next week when we start really getting into recruiting and some possible solutions at them. But goodness, what are we talking about here? We should be spending our time finding solutions, working together, being collaborative, because this is not that hard. I spent a lot of time on front end recruiting and dealt with the nation's youth. And I spent a lot of time on the back end dealing with that grown up youth that's had a career. And I'm telling you, it's not that far away, but it is going to take a tribe of people who are going to stand up and fight for what's right. And that's what this is. It's not a fight to be contentious. It's not a fight over dollars. It's a fight for the morality of what's right for people who have selflessly put themselves on the line, do the things that most people won't do. And we owe that to our fellow brothers and sisters. And we owe that to each other, and we owe that to our national security, because we're all at risk with where our posture is right now. So it's going to take guys like you, Adam, that are willing to say the unpopular stuff that gets people riled up, and keep fighting to, open eyes so that collectively we can solve the problem.
I'm with you, man. I would argue that I am here to be contentious, not contentious towards our community, but just to do what we're doing and have the conversations and make the noise that everybody wants to sweep under the rug. I'm really excited to continue this conversation next week and actually dive into the meat and potatoes of the way you and I are dealing with the transition and what we're seeing in the transition. So from your perspective, let's talk about what they can expect when they come back. You want to do this the same time next week? What do you want to do? We haven't even talked about
this. I think we do. And so, next week, I want to go a little bit deeper into just that, like into the options that service members have as they're transitioning. There are a lot of great programs out there. There are a lot of great resources that people need to explore, and we need to kind of share to each other. The LinkedIn user, I got to see your thing.
It says the crazy thing
LinkedIn
about
user,
the
crazy idea.
Consequences are more motivated and volunteered for stronger military, better economy overall, for having even more potential workers for the country, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It would be a win-win for our country. I have to agree with that. And I was actually thinking this. I was going to save it for next week, but I'll go ahead and put it out there for you, LinkedIn user. Thank you for the comment. And everybody that's commented here, Tasha, Andrew, LinkedIn user, Matt Lasher, Joe Crutcher, Mike Croner, my buddy, and David Granillo. The thing is I agree with what you were saying. I agree with you, LinkedIn user, because if we get the transition right, people like me who joined the Army to get out of small town Indiana because I knew there was more to the world and that my life didn't fit in that box in Southern Indiana where I grew up, and that I wanted to go make my own way or whatever, using the Army, or any branch of the military, and then we get the transition right and we flourish on the outside, it can only boost recruitment numbers and only boost national security and inspire more people to join. I mean, I was inspired by a guy, Alex Burkle. I don't know if you're listening to this. He's a big E9 in the Air Force, started in the Army. He went to basic training the summer between his junior and senior year. And I saw the physical and mental and emotional changes in him because we were on the wrestling team together. And I was like, I want to be like that guy. I want to be like that guy. And so I joined the Army because I knew what opportunity it was going to provide for me, but I didn't know all the shit that was going to come on the backside of it. And, that's just it. Like we can still be examples and provide to our respective branches if you take care of us on the backside. And I'm going to get off the soapbox on that because I think that's definitely for next week's episode. We have somebody else joining us next week too. I'm really excited because as most people know, I love to do these things without having met people or had conversations with them before and see the natural energy and our thoughts and ideas come together. So tell everybody who's joining us next week and kind of what we're going to be talking about, because part 3 is going to be my favorite part. And I know you and I have discussed this already, but part 3, we're going to talk about how leadership is failing and how to make leadership better on the transition side. And I have lots of thoughts and feelings on this. So in 2 weeks, you'll hear a lot more out of me, and the mouth will come out, and the candor and the unfilteredness will be out there. But really, the next episode that we do is really more from your domain, and you're leaning on your experience with 15 years of recruiting and then kind of working with SkillBridge folks. So tell us kind of what we can expect to talk about next week, because I really don't even know. I just kind of go with the flow. And
yeah, I mean, look, we talk about anything, but this recruiting was a passion of mine, Adam. That's the bottom line. I lived it every single day. I love it. I'm a sicko. I'm probably the only human being in this world that really ever enjoyed the majority of my time there. But just kind of, again, spending time in this world of recruiting on the front end, seeing people go through the transition on the back end. We're going to talk about what the impact is to the entire nation. We're going to go in depth and talk about what happens to the individual that finds themselves in that and the result of a poor transition and how that's affecting front end propensity to want to enlist. And we're going to bring on a buddy of mine that I've known for almost a decade and a half. That's going to give a breakdown on how we became the all volunteer force and what that model was, and really dig into who runs recruiting for DoD, who's making those policies. And it's just kind of scary, eye-opening when you start kind of pulling back the Wizard of Oz sheet and realize that this is not being run the way that we think it's being run, and the potential downfalls that come from that. So that's what we're hoping to do. Share a little bit about the individual impact and what folks can do to further help and assist to prevent going down that pathway. But we're really just going to kind of enlighten people and expose. So we're going to bring Matt Lasher on. He co-hosts the podcast that we have dropping at the end of the month, the Repurpose podcast. And that's where we spend a lot of our time, is talking about these issues that we really nerd out on, that if the public was 100% aware of where our posture is and how things are going, there'd probably be a bit more panic, or maybe we won't say panic, we'll say a desire to want to see change because it affects us all. So that's really the hope for next week, is to give a little history lesson, give a snapshot, and really showcase where this thing continues to go if we have service members that are not willing to step up and fight for that change. So we're not here to be whiny babies about the situation. No one, I don't really feel that any veteran or any service member is a victim. That is not an acceptable thing. We decided to join. We got paid on the 1st and the 15th. We got 30 days of paid vacation. You had 3 squares a day. You had your housing taken care of. Medical and dental was covered. You made some great friends. You got some skills. That was the trade-off. And so you've got to keep that in the forefront of your mind. But we can do what's right for each other. And what's right for each other, what's right for the future, is inspiring change and giving practical solutions, not just problem framing issues, so that steps can be taken to kind of avert the trajectory that we're on right now. And that's ultimately what we hope to cover next week, Adam.
Hell yeah. Thomas, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for doing this. It's been an honor and a privilege, and I cannot wait for the next 2 episodes to come out. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a live strategic veteran production with Transition Talks, the hidden bridge of the untold story of military transition, part 1. join us next Wednesday, February the 5th at 1500 Eastern time. We'll be doing this again. Thomas and Matt will be here. And then the following week, we'll be doing part 3. And that one's going to have some really eye-opening insights in it, some that I'm not even sure you're aware of yet. So I can't wait to get into that stuff. And I'm super grateful. I hope everybody that tuned in today, first of all, I'm super grateful for you listening to us rant for an hour and 15 minutes. Second of all, thank you for the comments and showing up. And if I could just ask, share this with the community, share this with the veteran community, because these are the conversations that are going to change these things moving forward. DOD is not going to change it. The administration is not going to change it. It's people like Thomas and me and Matt and the countless others that I interact with on a daily basis. They're out there building things and actively working to make the transition better for us. So until February 5th at 1500, we're going to sign off. We'll see you guys next week. And I really hope more of you tune in because there's a ton of value here. LinkedIn user, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for the comments and thank you for being here. Really appreciate it. Mac, you're being thanked too. So,
hey, well, thank everybody. I got to just reiterate it. Thank you guys all for being here. Adam, thank you for doing the things that you do, and really excited to see where this goes because I know that the folks that have tuned in for this, the folks that are impacted by that message, if we have you back over here for round 2, I promise you the conversation is going to get a little bit better. And we're going to start taking tangible action to make those things come together. So appreciate all of your guys' time and attention and the love for believing in this mission and being part of it.
Yeah, for sure. I echo that too. Take care, everybody. We'll see you next week.